The year 2050 is often spoken about like a distant horizon, a number floating far away in policy papers and conference speeches. But in reality, it is approaching quickly, carried by children already born, by infrastructure already planned, by decisions already being made today. And when experts speak about 2050, one place appears again and again at the center of every forecast: Africa, not as charity, not as crisis, but as consequence. Because by mid-century, the continent will hold one of the largest working-age populations on Earth. Cities will expand, markets will multiply, influence will grow, and this demographic reality alone guarantees that Africa will matter in ways impossible to ignore. Yet numbers do not automatically create power. Population can become dividend or pressure depending on preparation, education, governance, opportunity, and vision. And so the story of Africa in 2050 is not predetermined. It is conditional, built from choices unfolding right now. Because history shows potential without structure can be exploited, but potential with strategy can reshape the world, and global powers understand this. Which is why investment, diplomacy, and competition across Africa are intensifying. Infrastructure corridors, mineral agreements, digital networks, energy partnerships, each actor positioning for a future in which Africa becomes central to supply chains, innovation, and geopolitics. And for Africans, this attention is double-edged, offering capital and connectivity while also raising old questions about leverage, ownership, and sovereignty. Because who benefits from growth matters as much as growth itself. And inside the continent, conversations are changing. Younger generations increasingly impatient with narratives of dependency, demanding participation in design, in entrepreneurship, in policy, because exposure to global standards through technology makes comparison immediate, expectations higher, tolerance for stagnation lower, and urbanization accelerates this pressure. Mega cities becoming laboratories where infrastructure, inequality, creativity, and ambition collide, where informal solutions sometimes outpace formal planning, where innovation emerges not from abundance but necessity. Mobile banking, transforming finance, renewable energy, bypassing grids, digital platforms, enabling voices once ignored, and culture travels faster than ever. Music, film, fashion, reshaping global perception. Soft power, reinforcing economic negotiation, because how Africa is seen influences how Africa is treated. And at the same time, climate realities demand adaptation. Agriculture must modernize, water systems must strengthen, environmental management must innovate, because vulnerability can become crisis or leadership depending on response. And Africa holds immense potential for green energy, solar, wind, hydro, positioning it not only as participant but pioneer if investment aligns with strategy. And education stands at the center of every scenario. Skills determine productivity. Productivity determines competitiveness. Competitiveness determines influence. And reforming education to match future economies may be one of the most decisive battles of the coming decades, because without it, demographic growth risks frustration, migration, instability. But with it, the same growth becomes engine of expansion, and regional integration amplifies opportunity. Continental trade agreements seeking to turn fragmentation into collective strength, because unified markets attract industry, and industry retains value, and value builds resilience, and resilience protects sovereignty, and sovereignty allows negotiation from confidence rather than desperation, and governance will remain critical. Transparency attracting trust, stability inviting investment, accountability enabling citizens to believe in institutions. And belief may be as important as policy, because participation strengthens legitimacy, and legitimacy sustains reform, and the diaspora becomes bridge, moving capital, skills, and advocacy across borders, linking Africa to global networks while reinforcing identity, creating feedback loops of knowledge and ambition, and still challenges remain: debt burdens, political conflict, uneven development, external interference. No projection ignores them, but challenges do not eliminate trajectory. They complicate it, and complexity demands leadership capable of balancing urgency with patience, realism with imagination. Because transformation rarely happens in straight lines. It unfolds through experiments, setbacks, revisions, and breakthroughs, and perhaps the most profound shift toward 2050 is psychological. The movement from asking how Africa can catch up toward asking how Africa can lead. Not in imitation, but in innovation, because leapfrogging offers possibility to design differently. Cities built with digital infrastructure from the start, economies oriented toward technology and sustainability rather than extraction, governance models incorporating tradition with modernity. And these ideas are no longer abstract. They are being tested across the continent right now, sometimes quietly, sometimes boldly, and success in one place influences confidence elsewhere, because demonstration inspires replication. And gradually narratives evolve. Africa not as future promise but as present force. And global institutions adjust, recognizing influence shifting, representation demanded, voice asserted. And the world that once assumed Africa would follow must prepare for Africa that negotiates, collaborates, sometimes leads, and what determines which path prevails may be clarity of memory. Remembering interruption without being trapped by it, honoring resilience without romanticizing struggle, channeling heritage into direction, because heritage is not museum, it is resource, and resource becomes power when mobilized. And so Africa in 2050 stands less as prediction than invitation, an invitation to prepare, to educate, to invest wisely, to build inclusively, to think long-term, because the future does not wait for certainty. It rewards readiness, and readiness grows from belief. Belief in possibility, in competence, in worth, and those beliefs are spreading, carried by entrepreneurs, artists, scholars, activists, citizens, refusing narrow definitions, imagining futures broader than inheritance. And perhaps the coming power shift is not only geopolitical, it is narrative. Who tells Africa's story? Who defines its identity? Who imagines its tomorrow? Because control of narrative shapes policy, shapes investment, shapes ambition, and reclaiming narrative may be as transformative as any infrastructure project. And by 2050, the world may look back at these decades as turning points, when Africa moved from object to author, from terrain to strategist, from resource-based to decision-maker. And if that happens, it will not be miracle. It will be accumulation of millions of actions taken consistently, deliberately, courageously. And the question lingering in the present is simple: will preparation match potential? Because if it does, the shift will not surprise those who were paying attention, and perhaps you are now one of them.